All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody, to our May 12th meeting. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a call to order with a roll call. Member Linden is not here today, so Dr. Garcia has volunteered to do our roll call.
Good morning, everybody and staff. Let's go ahead and do our roll call. Let's see who we have on board. Let's see, Member Lillian Wong.
Present.
Member Garcia, present. Member Hancock. Member Kawaguchi.
Here.
Member Morodomi.
Here.
Member Pruitt.
Here.
Member Ross.
Here.
Member Sims.
Here.
Member Yu. Okay, it looks like we have a quorum. We can move forward. Thank you, everybody.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to go on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is public comments for items not on the agenda. And are there any comments in the room? Does not look like it. And then, Madam Moderator, if you could open up the queue to see if there's anyone who has a comment.
Absolutely. We are now taking public comment via WebEx. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And it looks like our first request comes from Dr. Doug Major. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You will be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning.
First, Doug Major, just representing the California Children's Vision Now Coalition. We talked last year regarding before SB 1089 was demised as the bill to prohibit pension funds in Turkey. It was gutted. Of course, you're all aware of that. Just so to let you know, we're still working very closely with the Department of Healthcare Services, and particularly talked a number of times to the head, Michelle Bass, as well as the public or the population management, Cal Ames. Disappointed after a lot of work there. They did put one line in about vision care in their 300-page report. But this year with SB 340, again, it's gone through so far into appropriations, zero opposition, and Senator Eggman's done a great job. Just so you're aware, again, looking at the numbers, the number of children since the adults have been involved with Medicaid has gone down approximately 50,000 per year, so it's getting worse. Our goal is really to make sure that children are getting the vision care that they need. Just the other bill that we were involved with Holden, just a point would be that hopefully when they do these bills for directories, there should be a comment on those who give exams and then those who give glasses. And that's the problem with the PIA currently, the PIA Department of Healthcare Services marriage is
30 seconds.
Yeah, number of individuals get exams but not glasses. And so just so you're aware, we're still working. Any of the members who have an interest in joining our coalition or just keeping in touch with this, please contact me personally. We've got some good momentum this year again, but would need your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Major.
And we're going to give just a couple of seconds to see if the hand that we lost comes back up. Otherwise, we're going to move on with the agenda. Seeing no other requests for comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 3, which is the board president's report. And okay, yeah. So before we get started with my report. I just wanted to take a minute to recognize a past board member who recently passed away, Dr. Ken Lawanda. Dr. Lawanda was a well-known optometrist, a regulatory specialist, and a consultant to many in the eye care field. He was a leader who was passionate about regulation and service. Most recently, he was elected to the ARBO board and its executive committee and was serving as secretary-treasurer of ARBO. In the past, Dr. Lawanda served not only on the California State Board of Optometry, but also the Vermont State Board of Optometry and the College of Optometrists of British Columbia. He was one of a kind and will be greatly missed. So, thank you. I think we're going to move on to board officer elections.
Yes, thank you, President Wong, and I will handle this one partially for you since you are nominated on this item. So we are on item 3, Board President's Report, item A, Board Officer Elections. At the March meeting earlier this year, we brought forward the nominations for Board Officer Elections pursuant to our Business and Professions Code and our Board Administrative Manual. The nominations that we received as of March 31st of this year are listed here in the packet, and I will read them into the record as well. Nominations received as of March 31st, 2023 for Board President. Dr. Lillian Wong was nominated by Dr. Jeffrey Garcia. For Board Vice President, Dr. Jeffrey Garcia was nominated by Dr. Lillian Wong. And for Board Secretary, Member Linden was nominated by Dr. Lillian Wong. Today is the final call for these nominations, and I know we have 2 of our nominees present, and if they would like to make a candidate statement or otherwise speak on their nomination, they certainly may do so.
Dr. Garcia, do you want to make a comment?
Sure, I'll make a comment. Wasn't prepared to, but I'll just say that it's been an honor and privilege to serve on this board and serve the people of California. I feel that we have a lot of work to do, and I feel like we have accomplished quite a bit in the past few years, but I look forward to the challenges and meeting them with the staff at the board and the rest of the board members. Thank you for your vote, for your confidence, and I just promise to always do my best and to be present. Thank you.
Yep, I'd like to echo Dr. Garcia. It's been an honor to serve, and it's an honor to be nominated, and I look forward to all the great work that we will be doing in this upcoming year. And Member Linden has also accepted her nomination, and she has also expressed happiness at being able to serve for the next coming year as Secretary.
Council, we have this is an item A and an item B. Before we move on to item B, should we entertain a possible motion on the elections, or should we go ahead and move to item B and then entertain a motion?
You could do it either way. Just after the motion and second, just remember to take a public comment.
Okay. If there's no objection from the members, I would entertain a motion at this time related to our board officer elections. We have a suggested motion in this item that we would entertain at this moment before we could move on to item B to commemorate our departing members.
This is Member Kawaguchi. I'll make the motion. I move to elect the board officers as nominated here today: Dr. Lillian Wong for President, Dr. Jeffrey Garcia for Vice President, and Uni Linden for Secretary for a one-year term beginning July 1st, 2023.
More than me seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Should we do a roll call vote at this time?
Yes,
We
please.
just need to take a public comment first.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator, if you could please open up the queue for public comment.
We are now accepting public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request on the motion, would you like to return?
Yes, please. So, Dr. Garcia, could we do a roll call vote, please?
We sure can. Okay, roll call vote. Member Wong,
Aye.
Member Garcia, I vote aye. Member Hancock,
Aye.
Member Kawaguchi,
Aye.
Member Morodomi,
Aye.
Member Pruitt,
Aye.
Member Ross,
I vote aye.
and Member Sims.
Aye.
Thank you.
I believe that motion passes and carries, and so we will move on to item B. This is item B of agenda item 3, commemoration of departing board members. I'll just say something quickly before I turn it over to President Wong. I'm fairly new in my role to this board, but today is certainly a bittersweet moment for me to say goodbye to 4 of our departing board members who I've had the distinct honor and pleasure of getting to know over the past 6 months. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I was certainly looking forward to a much longer and productive working relationship with these 4. But such is life; all good things must come to an end. And so, it's been my honor getting to know these 4, and looking forward to celebrating their service here today. Turn that over to you for any remarks you have.
Oh, I agree. I'm sad that we have so many members leaving us today. So we do actually have some, so I want to thank all 4 of them. The 4 people who are leaving us are Stacy Hancock, Dr. Jonathan Ross, Mark Morodomi, and Dr. Glenn Kawaguchi. We have some certificates as a thank you for your service, and I just wanted to say a little bit about each person who's leaving. So first of all, Stacy Hancock. Stacy, it has been a pleasure to work with you this past year. Having you as our optician on the board has greatly helped us in our discussions relating to all matters, especially opticianry. Your contribution to the fall publication of the spectacle was greatly appreciated. We are really sad that you are stepping down, and we will miss you and your knowledge. And then do we have the certificate? Oh, it was right there.
Yeah, I think if staff who's controlling our certificates, you could scroll down maybe just a little bit, and we'll be able to see the person's name. I believe that was Member Hancock on the first certificate.
And then each member who's not here today, we will mail you your certificates.
So I'm not sure, staff or who moderator, if we're controlling the PowerPoint here, if we could maybe scroll down just a bit to see the person's name before we move on to the next. There we go. So this is Member Hancock's certificate that we are presenting today, and as President Wong just mentioned, we will be mailing this out to you following the meeting. I believe we can move on to the next commemoration.
All right, our next one is to Dr. Jonathan Ross, who is sitting right next to me. It has been wonderful having you as a professional member on our board. Your contributions to the Practice and Education Committee and telemedicine work groups were truly insightful. Your enthusiasm and forward thinking have been an inspiration, and your absence will be really felt. We wish you luck as you and your wife move halfway across the United States and start your new adventure. And you too get a certificate. All right. So now we have our 2 last board members, Dr. Glenn Kawaguchi and Mark Morodomi. And I just want to say it has been an honor to have served with the both of you. The past 8 years have been amazing, and they have flown by. The 2 of you have been passionate advocates for the consumers of California. So first, Mark. Mark, you have been you have been past president, past vice president, chair of the Ledge-Reg Committee and the Consumer Protection Committees. You've been a champion of the underserved in California, and your contributions to all of our discussions have been infinite. Your sage advice and ability to question anything and everything is sorely going to be missed. So thank you for your service. And finally, Dr. Kawaguchi, you have served an amazing 11 years, past vice president, an integral part of the Ledge-Reg Committee and Dispensing Optician Committee and Children's Vision Work Group. Your passion for all Californians to have quality eye care, especially the children of California, have been inspiring. Now, even though you are leaving us, your role in public service is not ending. Congratulations on your appointment as director to the ARBO board and also being appointed as ARBO's board liaison to the California State Board of Optometry. I look forward to seeing more of you at our future meetings. Thank you.
So with that, we thank our 4 departing members for your service to the California State Board of Optometry. On behalf of President Wong, myself, and the entire board staff, we thank you for your service. Please stay in touch, especially those of you who are licensees of our board. We look forward to seeing you virtually or in person at future board meetings so that you can earn your CE hours.
That was a nice plug. Let's go ahead and go on to items number 4, the Department of Consumer Affairs update.
Well, actually, real quick before we do, Council, do we need to take public comment on item 3B? There's no action.
No, you don't need to.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that being said, let's go ahead and move on to item number 4, Department of Consumer Affairs update. And I believe we have Brian Clifford from to give us our update.
Good morning. My name is Brian Clifford. I'm a manager in the executive office at DCA. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today and provide this update. First, in honor of Public Service Recognition Week, which we celebrate this week, I want to begin by thanking you and the board staff for all your hard work. DCA kicked off this important week with a department-wide appreciation email to all staff and other messaging highlighting the essential work DCA employees do every day. We are grateful for your service, especially departing members. Moving on to our DEI update, established last fall, the department's DEI steering committee is comprised of 12 executive leaders from the boards, bureaus, and department, and has been working on many items, including updating the strategic planning process, training, and the development of an informational DEI fact sheet, which was distributed to board leadership. Our strategic planning has been updated to embed DEI into the process, which includes a survey, DEI section in the environmental scan, video messages, and a brief training video. DCA's solid team will be reaching out to executive officers to develop or update new strategic plans. In addition, all DCA solid trainers will complete a 50-hour DEI training certification program through the University of Massachusetts. On April 28th, 2023, Director Kirkmeyer issued a memorandum on DCA's commitment to employees to increase the availability of DEI courses through DCA's solid training unit. A DEI section has been added to the homepage of the Learning Management System, or LMS, and employees can access and register for the 3 courses available in June. Over the coming months, additional courses and educational information will be available. DCA's first DEI fact sheet has been released. It was developed as an informational tool and includes the department's 3 DEI initiatives and memorializes DCA services that support these efforts. And today, the DEI Steering Committee will hold its quarterly meeting, and in addition to discussing ongoing DEI activities for the department through the end of the year, the committee will elect a chairperson and vice chairperson. The DEI Steering Committee's work continues, and we look forward to updating you in the months ahead. Moving on to training, we always want to remind board members and staff regarding required trainings. There are 2 DCA-wide mandated trainings for 2023. This includes sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness. All DCA employees and appointees, including board and advisory council members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training this year. Board members must take the 2-hour supervisory training, and advisory council members must take the 1-hour non-supervisory training. This training is required every odd-numbered year and is online, self-paced, in approximately 2 hours. Both the sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness training are available on the department's LMS. For more information, a mandatory trainings page has been created to help members identify, access, and track specified trainings. This page includes direct links to mandatory trainings as well as pertinent information and policies specific to these courses. Go to DCA's homepage and click on DCA Board Member Resource Center under Required Board Member Training. You can also reach out to our BBR team at any time for assistance. Another reminder we always share, board members must complete the board member orientation training within 1 year of their appointment and reappointment. However, all board members are welcome at BMont. The next BMont will be offered in person in Sacramento on June 20th, 2023, and again October 10th, 2023 at a location to be determined. Again, members can register for these trainings via LMS. As the fiscal year comes to an end, please submit your travel claims, TECs, as soon as possible, but no later than 5 p.m. on Wednesday, June 8th. Claims submitted after this date will still be processed. However, they will not be paid until July 2023. For questions regarding travel claims, please contact our Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations, Melissa Gear. As you are aware, legislation passed last year amending provisions of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act to extend the ability of state bodies, such as DCA's board and some bureaus, to conduct public meetings virtually through July 1st, 2023. Absent new legislation to extend these provisions, DCA's boards and bureaus will not be allowed to conduct meetings virtually after July 1st. DCA is aware of legislation recently introduced, SB 544, which removes certain teleconference requirements from the Open Meeting Act. This bill was recently amended to do the following: require members of a state body participating remotely to disclose whether any individuals 18 years or older are present in the room at the remote location and the general nature of the member's relationship with those individuals. It also requires state bodies to end or adjourn a meeting upon discovering that a means of remote participation required by the bill has failed and cannot be restored. This bill does not contain an urgency clause and will not take effect until January 1, 2024. So boards and bureaus should be prepared to conduct public meetings in person beginning July 1st, 2023. Next, on January 5th, 2023, a federal law took effect that enables service members and their spouses who hold professional licenses in a different state to practice in California within the same professional discipline and at a similar scope of practice if they are required to relocate to California due to military orders. Since becoming aware of the new law, DCA has been collaborating with our agency on how best to implement it. DCA will share information as it becomes available. In the meantime, should your board receive an inquiry from a service member or spouse regarding this new law, we advise you to reach out to DCA Legal Affairs. And finally, DCA submitted its 2022 annual report to the legislature, and this report is now available on DCA's homepage. This annual report includes a new design and additional reporting metrics such as military licensing data now required for all DCA boards and bureaus. We hope you will take time to review this impressive compilation of the valuable work of the boards and bureaus. And with that, I will turn it back over to the board president, and thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Before we ask for public comment, I was wondering if there are any comments from our board members. Are there any hands raised? No? I'm sorry? Oh. Okay. All right. So no comments from any board members? Then I'm going to ask for a comment from anyone in the meeting room. And it looks like there's no comments from anyone in the meeting room. Mr. Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A for our public comment.
We are now accepting public comment on agenda item 4. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. And thank you, Brian. All right, we're now going to move on to item number 4B, which is a report from the Budget Office. And then we have Karen and Veronica both in the Budget Office to give us our report. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Veronica Hernandez. I'm the budget analyst with DCA. I want to thank the board and executive staff for allowing me a few minutes to present the board's expenditure projections and fund condition statement.
Make sure your mic is, the green light's on.
Now you're on. Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Okay, sorry. So we're going to refer to item numbers 4BI. These documents are what I'll be going over today, and it provides a lot of information on the board's budget. We're actually going to start with page 2 first, which is the board's expenditure projection. These projections are based on actual data through fiscal month 9. For the purpose of this document, it's to provide to the board with detailed expenditures through a point in time. In this case, it's as of March, as well as projections through the remaining fiscal year. When reviewing this report, the top portion of the board's is the board's personnel service expenses, followed by the board's operating expenses. The green columns will be the board's prior year actual data, and the blue columns are the board's budget. Orange columns are the projections to year end. As we move to the end of the document, you'll see the board had a beginning budget of just over $4 million. Year to date, the board has expended approximately $2 million and is projected to spend a total of $2.9 million, creating a reversion for the board's fund of just over $1.1 million, or 28.54% reversion. The next document we'll be going over now is the page 1 of the document, which is the fund condition statement. As a reminder, we read this document from top to bottom and then left to right. The left column is the board's prior year 2021-22 actuals. It shows the board's beginning balance of adjusted begin balance of just over $2 million. The board collected $2.5 million in revenue and expended $2.4 million. The board ended 2021-22 with just over $2 million as a reserve balance, and that would be 7.9 months in reserve. For current year, we're projecting the board to bring in approximately $2.5 million in revenue, expend approximately $3 million between authorized expenditures and direct draws to the fund, leaving the board with a fund balance of just over $2.6 million, which is 7.5 months in reserve. In budget year, revenue is projected to come in just over $3 million at 2.87. Expenditures are projected at full appropriation, reducing the fund reserve balance to 3.5 months by the end of 23-24. The Budget Office will continue to monitor the board's revenue and expenditures and report back to the board with monthly expenditure projections as we continue to close fiscal months in current year. A few things to note on the board's fund condition. It is a snapshot in time. One of the main factors driving the expenditure increases in future years is a result of personnel service adjustments. These include general salary increases as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustments. The Budget Office includes a conservative ongoing 3% increase to expenditures on the fund condition statement to account for these ongoing incremental adjustments. The fund condition does not include any future increased licensing or enforcement expenditures, which could create additional costs to the board's fund in out years by requiring additional resources to support the increase. Lastly, I would like to note to the board that any future legislation or anticipated events could result in the board's need for additional resources, which include increased pressure to the fund. Budget Office will continue to monitor the board's fund condition statement and keep a line of communication with the board's executive staff for any future needs or expectations. Again, I would like to thank the board for allowing me to present today, and if I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Members, are there any questions for our budget team?
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any comments from our members right now. Are there any comments from the meeting? Oh, take
Lillian?
it back. Yes.
I'm just looking at this document. This is Mark Moridomi, and I'm seeing that.
Hey, Mark, can you get closer to your mic?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Sorry, we just can't hear you in the meeting room. Thanks.
I'm looking at the expenditures, and maybe I'm reading this incorrectly. Let's see now. Oh, no, I see. It's the difference between current year and budget year. All right. I with, well, in the expenditures line 1111, I see the number going from 2,863,000 to 4,029,000. That seems like a big jump, and what's the reason for that?
I can take it. Okay. I'll take a stab at that, Member Moridomi, and obviously we've got the experts here in the room as well. So the 2.8 million, that 2,863,000 number that you're seeing, that is what we are projected to spend through the year end, through the fiscal year ending June 30. The number I actually like to look at, though, is not that 2.8 million. If you look down a couple rows, is the 3 million number, the number that's around 3.1. That's the actual total expenditures that we're projected to spend at the end of this fiscal year ending June 30. The 4 million number that you see, and you can either look at the number that's just over 4 million or the 4.2 million number, that is what we are authorized to expend, and that is the number, if we fully expended our budget, that we would spend. We are not currently fully expending our budget because we are holding we're holding positions that are vacant open and realizing significant salary savings. So that's why our actual spending this year of a little more than 3 million is about $1 million less than what our fully authorized expenditures could be under the governor's budget.
Thank you. That's a very understandable explanation. I'm glad I asked the question too. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from board members? It doesn't sound like we have any other member comments. Are there any comments from the room? No? Mr. Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
We are now accepting public comment via WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on the budget update, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. All right. Thank you. We're now going to move on to item number 5, which is discussion and possible approval of meeting minutes. We have the minutes from March 17th, 2023 in the packet. And do any board members have any comments about the meeting minutes from March 17th? And it looks like there's no comments from any of our board members. Everyone's so quiet today. Do we have any comments from anyone in the meeting room? And there's no comments from anyone in the meeting room. So, Mr. Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A for our public comment regarding the meeting minutes from March 17th, 2023, please.
We are now accepting public comment on agenda item 5. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Okay, we are now going to move on to item number 6, which is our executive officer's report. Greg?
Thank you, President Wong and members. This is agenda item 6A, Executive
Excuse me,
Officer's Report.
point of order, Greg. Do we need to vote on the minutes?
Oh, Member Mordomi, you are absolutely correct. We need to take a vote on the meeting minutes. If VP Garcia, if you could please take a roll call vote.
Yes, we'll do that now. So we'll do a roll call vote. Member Hancock. Member Kawaguchi.
Aye.
Member Morodomi. Member Pruitt.
I'm sorry
Aye.
to interrupt. Dr. Garcia, do we have a pending motion?
I will
Thank you.
move to approve the minutes as presented for March 17th, 2023.
I'll second. It's my
Okay.
last meeting, so I gotta get all my votes and comments in before the end.
Okay, we'll continue. We'll restart the roll call. Member Hancock.
Aye.
Member Kawaguchi.
Aye.
Member Morodomi.
Aye.
Member Pruitt.
Aye.
Member Ross.
Aye.
Member Sims.
Aye.
Member Wong.
Aye.
And Member Garcia, I vote aye. Thank you.
So looks like motion passes. And now we will move on to item number 6, which is our executive officer's report.
Thank you, President Wong. Agenda item 6A, Executive Officer's Report, Program Update. Would be remiss just before I jump in real quick to this item, staffing update, which we have put together here in the memo. There's one more person that we actually want to make mention of and introduce as well. Should have done this on the budget item, but I'm going to introduce her here now. She's in the room with us. The budget presentation that we just received from Veronica, she will be transitioning off of our program, and we are delighted to have Sarah, who is here with us. She's standing up in the room, waving. We're looking forward to working with her on all future optometry board budget items. So thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Veronica. Continuing on with my staffing update on agenda item 6A, I want to announce that the board has recently filled 2 vacant positions, the enforcement SSA position and a licensing SSA position. You will be hearing more about the enforcement SSA position in a little bit, but the licensing SSA position has been filled by Monica Peterson. She is a employee in our office who has been working most principally on opticianry issues, but we're very excited that she applied for and earned a promotion to the SSA position, where she will now be working both on opticianry and on optometry items. So we're very excited to welcome her into that role, and then, as I mentioned, you'll be hearing more about the enforcement position shortly. We also welcomed on March 24th a new regulatory counsel, Elizabeth Dietzen Olson. She takes over from Daniel Rogers, whose last day with DCA was back in February. We're very much looking forward to working with Ms. Olson on several of the regulatory packages that we need to get working on. And she will be here and available for a later item on our agenda as well. A copy of the current organizational chart for our board is included at the end of this item, so wanted to call your attention to that as well. Moving on to item number 2 in the Executive Officer Report, some DCA items. At the March board meeting, I reported on our board's partnership with the department's Organizational Improvement Office. In February of this year, we began what we expect will be a year-long project to review and evaluate all of the board's business processes. The goal of this project is to identify opportunities for efficiency and best practices across our licensing, enforcement, and administrative units. To date, we have mapped with this team 54 different process maps. And that is just a snapshot in the bucket. We haven't even moved on to the enforcement or administrative sides of the mapping process yet. We've just concluded the optometry licensing side, which we're excited about because we're about to enter a very exciting graduation season for our optometry licensing program. We've begun work recently on the opticianry licensing process maps, and we're hopeful to conclude those soon as well. Upon conclusion of all of the licensing process maps, the project will move on to the enforcement and then the administrative units. Again, as I mentioned, the goal and purpose of this project is to try to identify opportunities for efficiencies and best practices, and I want to share just a few examples with the board and members of the public of sort of fruit that has already been born from this effort. So the first is letters of verification. A lot of our applicants will present to us having already been licensed in another state and will frequently reach out notifying us essentially of that basic fact. Hey, I'm licensed in Texas. How do I get licensed here in California? Most of the time, our applicants acquire from their home state licensing agency a letter of verification. Usually they have to pay for that, and then it has to be mailed and delivered to our board. We've discovered, however, that most states, with just a few exceptions, have an online license lookup functionality that's very similar to what DCA has. And in most cases, this online functionality is able to be used as a primary source verification. The benefits of using these online tools to verify an out-of-state license both realize to the applicant and to our process. So on the applicant side, they may save some nominal money not having to apply for and pay their home state for a letter of verification. On our side, we are likely to save perhaps a few weeks of application time, not having to wait for a letter to be arrived in the mail. So we're very excited about the opportunity to start using this process. And just since we've put together this agenda item memo, we are actually starting to see other states reach out proactively to our board, encouraging use of their very own online lookup systems. So it's exciting to see that happen. Paper applications is another opportunity that we have to realize some efficiencies. We presently have several applications which are not on Breeze and just exist in a paper form. If we are able to move these applications online, we would reduce paper and likely have a much more efficient process. Examples of these applications include the retired and the retired volunteer application, and we're actually working through at the moment a revision to the retired volunteer application upon discovering a outdated reference in law. We also have the glaucoma and the immunization certification applications, which exist in paper that we're beginning to work toward putting online. And the final item to mention here is the fictitious name permit applications. We receive approximately 150 or so of these applications every year, and most of these, an overwhelming majority of them, are deficient at the moment that they arrive at the board. Most of these applications are missing items such as lease agreements, proof of ownership, or the articles of incorporation. We're exploring technological solutions with Breeze that would enable this license type to not be submitted unless all of the required items were provided. This would speed up the application process for these permits and result in a much more efficient outcome for our licensees. Final item for 6A is just to report to the board and members of the public some recent outreach efforts that we've been engaged in. As I mentioned earlier, the optometry schools have a big graduation week upon them, and so we've been meeting with the California schools most recently, and also recently had a tour that was very, very eye-opening and exciting at the Sacramento City College West Sacramento Center campus, looking at their new optical technology lab. I'm so excited to continue to do more outreach. Two items that I want to mention here just to wrap up item 6A is we recently released an updated consumer complaint form into two common languages that we frequently see from our applicants and consumers. And these languages are Spanish and simplified Chinese. Until this effort, we only had our complaint form in English. So we're very excited to make these translations happen and to release these. And we're looking forward to possibly doing some more translations down the road. Finally, our spring edition of the Spectacle is in production, I think it's safe to say at the moment, and we're hopeful will still come out at the end of this month. So that's well underway. This edition focuses on CE requirements, and very honored to have a contribution from member Ross in that newsletter, as well as information pertinent to the upcoming optometry graduation season. That is my executive officer report for agenda item 6A. Happy to take any questions from members at this time. Yeah, public comment here. And then,
Mordomi, I know that the regulatory fee discussion is going to happen at the end of the meeting. Will the budget folks be around if we have questions for them related to that?
Member Mordomi, yes, we will have budget help, I believe, for item 8, as well as our regulatory counsel.
Thank you.
And Member Mordomi, just if you could try to speak maybe a little louder or turn up your mic. It's difficult in the hearing room here to hear every word you're saying.
I apologize. I'll see what I can do. Thank you.
All right. So thank you. Are there any other board member comments? You guys can just unmute. I have you guys on screen, but I can't see hands raised. It doesn't look like there are any other board member comments. Are there any comments from the meeting room? And there's no comments from the meeting room. Mr. Moderator, if you can open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
We are now accepting public comment on this matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Let's move on to item B of the executive officer's report.
Thank you, President Wong. We're going to have Jolie Walker, Enforcement Manager, present agenda item 6B.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? The enforcement unit recently hired an SSA in our enforcement program, Scott Criswell, who's actually here today, his first board meeting. He began in our unit on May 1st. He previously worked in the private sector as a director of store management for a Sacramento-based business. He has a degree in criminal justice, and we are excited to have him with us. He's been training with enforcement staff and will be taking enforcement-related training classes for the first few months. Also, this is the last board meeting with Terry. She's leaving us. She's retiring May 30th. And she's worked for the state of California for 34 years. We're in the process of filling behind Terry, but she's irreplaceable. We have provided statistics, and we've included some new categories that we were requested to provide by board members. This includes the priority and categorization of our complaints, ranging from urgent to routine, and you'll see that on attachment 6BI for both optometry and opticianry. We are also now providing probation monitoring statistics on the quarterly complaint statistic logs. They can be found towards the bottom of those stats. CE statistics are also provided?
Before we move to CE, let's talk, there's a few things on this new report that we want to, I think, just call your attention specifically, as Jolie just mentioned. So you're seeing this report displayed a little differently than you've seen it at more recent meetings. And so right at the top here, you're now seeing for the first time the case complexity, the 3 categorization system that is used by the department, urgent, high, and routine. And then right below that, we've now further broken those out into more specific case categories, if you will, that fit within those complexity categories. So want to call your attention to that, as this was an ask by several members to display a little bit more robust statistics related to enforcement.
I mean, I think this is fantastic. I know we've asked in several past meetings about especially the urgent cases. So thank you for breaking down the report more so.
Yeah, and this is new, so we're going to be, adding and tweaking as we go along, but we were very happy to be able to provide these for you. And if there are any questions on the statistics, obviously, we're happy to answer those.
This is Member Mordomi. I have to say, this is the best enforcement table I've seen in my 8 years on the board, so thank you very, very much. And
we're happy to provide it.
Congratulations, Terry, on your retirement. I hope you can see in the future very clearly because of your service in the board.
Oh, thank you. You're very sweet to say that. I'll miss all of you on the board and my coworkers, my peers. There's not any better coworkers than what we have at the board. I'm really happy to have worked for Greg, and Jolie is awesome, and everyone else I'll miss terribly.
I echo Mark, but 6 months into retirement, if you get a little bit tired or bored, we will always welcome you back with open arms.
I'm probably going to need that, a break in 6 months. So I've already mentioned that, yeah, I would love to come back. Yeah, thank you.
And I told her the same thing. She is irreplaceable. After the statistics, we do list on the report all the disciplinary actions that have taken place, citations that have been issued, and those are, they have links so that if you wanted to view the documents, you're welcome to do so.
I have a question on that top section, this Member Kawaguchi. So for example, under high complexity, we show 1 in 3 quarters, 1 in all 3 quarters for a year-to-date total of 3. But is that the same case or those 3 different cases?
I'm sorry, on optometry, or is that
Yes, on optometry. The first section, case complexity.
Yes, the high.
Under high, yeah. There's
we received
1
each quarter.
Quarters.
Yeah, it's 1 each quarter.
Correct.
Oh, so 3 separate cases.
Correct. 1 each quarter. 1 separate case each quarter.
All right, thank you.
And
Hello,
this is
Board
Member
Member
Ross.
Sims.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you. This is Board Member Sims. I was one of the members that requested the more robust report. So I do just want to say thank you so much for providing this. This is really great. And also I just want to say again, thank you to Terry, just wonderful member of the team, always responsive and just will be missed, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. All of the other individuals at the board, they're just as helpful. So if you ever need anything, you can reach out to any of us because we're all awesome there. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is Member Ross. Again, that same section of case complexity, could you describe how it is that it's determined that things end up in the high or urgent category?
Sure. The case categories are listed below the complexity. And so what we consider urgent would be sexual misconduct, possible impairment drug impairment or mental impairment.
Meaning that anything that falls within that category is automatically elevated to urgent?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's based on the allegations, and then high would be unprofessional conduct depending on, patient harm. So if there's consumer harm, that's a high priority case. Incompetence, negligence would be also high. And then routine would be more, I didn't get the wrong prescription was written for my eyes, or I didn't get what I paid for, something like that would be routine.
And is this determination of complexity made right initially when the case is first presented? It's immediately categorized that way and then kind of goes through the process?
It is. Urgent cases need to be ran by me. So if we get anything in that might be urgent or high, I see those right away, and I determine the classification or the complexity. And we have had some miscategorized. It happens. And as soon as we realize that it should be maybe elevated, then we take immediate action. So it is determined by me or an analyst.
And of the 4 cases that we had, the 3 high and the 1 urgent, I'm looking at the next page of the report that talks about how long basically the process took. And so did all 4 of those, it seems like all of them were within the 181 to 1 year time frame for resolution?
Those might not be the same cases that were resolved. Typically, if it's an urgent or high case, they have to go to our Division of Investigations. We don't usually have those resolved within a year if we are confirming the allegations. So those may have been other high priority cases that were resolved. If they were these cases, then possibly there was a criminal conviction. I'm not sure of the specifics of each of these cases.
I see. So the timeline on here is from start to complete finish, not from when we receive the case and then pass it along out of the board.
And which one are you looking at?
I guess the question I'm getting at is, of the high and urgent cases, what's the time frame difference of how quickly things are acted on in those categories versus something that falls into the routine category?
That's a great question. High priority and urgent are acted on immediately. So we do everything we can right up front. Usually we do have to send those cases out, but we get those sent to DFI within a day or to 3 days of receipt.
Oh, okay.
Routine cases take a lot longer because usually we work those from our desks. So if we have to request their medical release, that can take up to 2 or 3 weeks to get that back from the consumer. We have to request medical records, a respondent summary of treatment. So those, and then if we do get medical records back, we have to send it out for a review because we're not doctors. So those do take quite a bit of time just because of all the back and forth between the parties. Whereas if we send a case to DFI, the investigators go out and they usually interview the subject, they gather all the information they need to make their case.
Well, it's wonderful to hear that we're talking about days within these high-level complex cases. So yeah, excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions about the statistics?
No, I think we still need to go on to CE.
So yeah, we're reporting on continuing education audit statistics because that's another thing that we wanted to show the board because we have recently reinstated the CE audit. So you've got that as the very last attachment.
This is 6BI. Double I. Yep.
Double I. And so.
There we go. So we have 6B double I on the board here now. We mentioned at the March meeting that we were going to be bringing this back to the May meeting. You should expect to see this report at every meeting going forward. This is the first time we're displaying it, so happy to take feedback on the design or how it looks. Just a little bit of background about what we're doing on CE audits. We had been faulted as a board coming out of our last sunset review in 2020
related to our performance in this area. Resources were secured at the board to begin revamping, if you will, the CE audit program. And since I came on board last November, this has been a big priority of both mine and Jolie and the enforcement team as well. And what we're reporting here that we want to make you aware of is we got off to a slow start in Q1 and Q2, but things have been starting to pick up in Q3, as I think the data does demonstrate. Though the data is limited, we should all be cautioned that this is a very small sample size at the moment. However, the pass rate is showing pretty close to 90%. One of the things we have been faulted at coming out of Sunset Review in 2020 was this feeling or this perception that when we were doing CE audits at the board, that compliance or the pass rate wasn't very high or wasn't very good enough. But happy to show today that we're close to 90%. That feels pretty good to me, at least. So again, expect to see more data as we continue to work in our audit program. There's no data to compare against for last year, so that's why you see that fiscal year 21-22 is blacked out. But looking forward to reporting more robust statistics on this. And just another encouragement of our licensees to be aware of the statutory requirements as they exist in Business and Professions Code 3059 and in Title 16 California Code of Regulations 1536. You will find all of the specific requirements for CE in those two places. We also highly encourage licensees to be utilizing the tools that are available to them to track their CE, including ARBO OE Tracker. That is very helpful to both the licensee and our staff when we're engaged in a CE audit. And again, as I've already made mention of, look forward to licensees attending board meetings in person or virtually where they can acquire a very easy 4 hours of CE. So this is the continuing education audit statistics report. And again, we look forward to showing more data at future board meetings.
And this is Member Wong. So Greg or Jolie, so if professional members or if optometrists fail their CE audit, do they have options? Would they end up just talking with enforcement, or is there a process that they would need to know about?
If you are chosen for a random audit, you will be contacted by our analyst, Cricket, and she will just reach out and ask for additional CE. She pulls what she can from ARBO. And if you've taken CE that was accredited somewhere else and not through ARBO, or it's not been uploaded to ARBO, you are welcome to provide her with all of your information. She gives you that chance to do so. If you do come up short, you will be issued a citation and a fine, and you will still have to come into compliance with the education that you're lacking.
Yeah, very important what Joey just mentioned about the compliance part, because in addition to a possible citation, there's an order of abatement that requires that individual to become compliant with the CE. Becoming compliant with the CE that one was short on doesn't count doubly for the subsequent cycle. It only brings you into compliance with the prior cycle. So licensees that are unsuccessful when selected for an audit need to also be aware that to become compliant, they need to take those missing CE hours, but that those missing CE hours will not count for future compliance.
This is Member Kawaguchi. I wanted to make a comment so that we continue this discussion as we track this data. So Q3, the percentage of non-pass was relatively high. It was over 20%. And so I just want to make sure that we have this continued discussion so that we are proactively communicating with optometry licensees to ensure that they are in compliance. I think that we should always be, above 95%. I can't see how an optometrist isn't going to take this part of their licensure seriously. So I think it's more of a matter of communication, and we could be proactive about that going forward.
Member Kawaguchi, you're 100% right. We've been talking internally with staff around ways that we can do further outreach, specifically to this point about CE and making our licensees aware, not just of the requirements, but that the tools that are available to them in this process. So, for example, we have a CE exemption form that folks are able to apply and submit to our board. If we receive those, we will review them. And this is an exemption form that allows one additional time, essentially, to become compliant. So I think that's an opportunity, just in some recent conversations that I've had around this issue over the past few weeks, that we have an opportunity to do some education and outreach on, specifically that point around the CE exemption form. And so we're looking forward to figuring out ways to get that information out, looking at our social media and other channels, such as our upcoming spring newsletter that has some of this information as well. So totally agree with you. I'd love to see it be 100%. I think coming out of our sunset review, we were, with limited data, passage rates were a lot worse than 88%. So certainly want to do the education and outreach to try to get our licensees in as close to 100% compliance as fully possible.
Member Kawaguchi, I also wanted to mention that as Gregory has done his outreach as well at the schools, he's brought it up to upcoming graduates as well, that we are doing these CE audits and that, you know, what to look for. And in the new Spectacle edition, Dr. Ross wrote a really informative article that's targeting new graduates also and letting them know more about the CE process and how imperative it is to use ARBO as they can to track those CE credits. So I think we're getting the word out there.
Are there any other comments from board members? Doesn't look like it. Are there any comments from the meeting room? There are no comments from the meeting room. Mr. Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
We are now accepting public comment on continuing education audit. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And we have a request from Paul Reimers, who I've been working with him on technical issues. Fantastic.
Yeah,
wonderful. Go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me?
You have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning.
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you, Paul.
Anyway,
he's using closed captioning.
The question, I've written it down about 3 times, but I'm just wondering, for retired optometrists, volunteer optometrists like me, like I volunteer like 2 afternoons a month for a free clinic doing the diabetic screening. I mean, would it be possible to reduce the CE requirements maybe from 50 to maybe down to 30 or 35 for 2 years? That's my question, you know.
Well, Paul, I'll just respond. Appreciate the comment. I think, as I understand your question, you're asking about whether there's any ability for a CE requirement for a licensee holding a retired volunteer license to have a lesser hour requirement. The law does not presently allow for that. The retired volunteer designation license is a license that enables an optometrist to fully practice with just limitations in terms of location, I believe. So I would suspect that the reason why holders of that license type must take 50 hours is because they have a license that enables them to fully practice optometry. However, I will say we do have a CE regulation that we have publicly noticed that we are in the middle of public comment on as well. That public comment period ends at the end of this month. And your comment related to CE hours for retired volunteer designation, although we're not specifically addressing that in the proposed regulation, your comment could certainly be welcomed in that venue as well. And we'll certainly take it back and further examine. But I just wanted to share that I believe because of the statutory allowance for a retired volunteer holder to fully practice optometry, that's why they're required to take 50 hours.
And this is Dr. Wong. I also just wanted to point out, we did change our CE requirement, our live CE, so the ability to actually fulfill all of your CE requirements is significantly easier in some ways because there's a lot of live virtual CEs and it doesn't have to be in person anymore.
All right, thank you, Paul. Bear with us just a moment while I take care of this. Our next speaker will be Tiffany Witherspoon. Hold on just a moment, Tiffany. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hear me?
Let's go ahead, please.
All right. My question is, are there any public records of information that states why the CE credits aren't being met?
I'm not sure that I fully understand the question, Ms. Witherspoon. Are you asking why a specific optometrist didn't meet the requirements and why they didn't?
Correct. So on the report, it shows, the percentage of those who still did not meet their CE requirements. Is there any report or information that states like the reasoning as to why was it that they just didn't complete everything, that something was not accurate? Is there any more description that's provided as to why they weren't able to meet their requirements?
Understood, yes. When we issue a citation on an optometrist who was not compliant with the CE requirements, that citation is public and is on our website, and it will tell you the specific information related to that person. Our enforcement statistics that we reported earlier today include an example of what I just mentioned.
Thank
Member
you.
Mordomi, I recall I asked a similar question in the past. Can you hear me okay? I changed some settings on my
Yes, go ahead,
we can
please.
hear you.
yeah, as to whether or not this is the responsibility of the board or the responsibility of the licensees to keep their licenses up, and why are we blaming, or why is the board being blamed for licensees not fulfilling their obligations? And I think the explanation I received is, although the statistics were high, the errors were minor or inadvertent, and not outright disregard of the CE rules. So I don't know on what basis that answer to me was based, but that is somewhat of an explanation as to the reason why the optometrists in general were not fulfilling their CE.
Are there any other comments from board members?
Yes, it's member Kawaguchi. So I'm going to tag on to that. And it links back to what Mark just said. However, also what I said, which is as we continue to roll forward with auditing continuing education, I think that we'll have an opportunity to continue to educate because, as we know, our regulations are going to be changing related to CE requirements for optometrists. And anytime there's any change, there's always going to be confusion. And anytime there's confusion, there's going to be people who are missing out and not doing things correctly. So it's going to be a great opportunity for us to be proactive on our communication, whether it's directly through our sources or asking our partners with the COA to make sure that there's communication going out with them as well.
Appreciate that. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I do think we should probably, assuming there's no other comment from board members, we probably would be advisable to probably take public comment again.
Do any other board members have any comments? Does not look like. Are there any public comments from the meeting room? There are no comments from the.
My apologies.
Oh, and Mr. Moderator, yes, if you can open up the Q&A, please.
We're going to take another 15 seconds for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. And our next comment comes from David Tritsky. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Colleagues, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Oh, great. Okay. Question. If somebody does not pass their CE requirement, if they receive a citation, is their license temporarily suspended until the CE requirement is met, or are they still allowed to practice even while that CE requirement has not been met?
The license is not suspended when you are issued a citation for failing to meet the CE requirements.
Is there a certain period that they have to complete their CE?
In the citation and order of abatement, there is that information contained that provides them a certain length of time depending on how deficient they were on their CE to come into compliance with the CE requirement.
Back. Dr. Turetsky, do you have any other questions or comments? Oh, is he off? Mr. Moderator, thank you, Dr. Turetsky, for your question. Mr. Moderator, are there any other public comments?
There are no other requests for public comment.
All right, well, let's go ahead and then go on to the next item, item 6C.
Item 6C is the Examination and Licensing Program Report, and we have Administration and Licensing Manager Randy Love joining us virtually to present this item.
Good morning, board members. So provided for your review is our Administration and Licensing Program reports. As you can see, the modifications and amendments to Breeze continues. Some of the changes that are happening currently include more mailing address functionality, as well as bypassing the continuing education question for an optometrist if they are renewing as inactive. For those who don't know, if you are renewing in inactive status, you are not required to complete any continuing education. So future renewals will not ask that CE question for optometrists who select inactive. Some of these others may sound familiar from earlier in the meeting. We're working on updating the fictitious name permit application so that it's more clear what documents will be required and you cannot submit it without those documents. We are also making some changes to the non-resident contact lens seller. Those applications and materials will refer to the correct name of the non-resident ophthalmic lens dispensers. We will also be adding the ability to order a letter of verification to the Breeze dashboard, so our licensees and registrants will no longer have to mail in a request and a check for those. They will be able to order them directly online. And we will also include the application for a temporary license And one of the issues that we have been having is with the way Breeze interacts with our exam vendor, PSI, for the California Laws and Regulations exam. We've been having some issues this graduation season with those. When we approve somebody to sit for the exam, that approval doesn't automatically go to PSI. So that's one of the things that we've been working on, and you'll be able to see in the statistics kind of the how the time frame of processing those exam request applications kind of shows that manual processing that had to be involved. Moving on to outreach, as Executive Officer Pruden has already mentioned, he provided some presentations to the current graduating class of optometrists in California, which is always, I've done that several times. It's always a great experience and very helpful, I think, for our applicants coming into getting ready to get licensed. And then the last thing that I have for you are statistical review of Q3. You will be able to see in the exam request that volume almost triples once we hit January. Those are all of our 2023 graduates getting ready to graduate optometry school, taking their CLRE so that they are ready to apply for licensure in next week, apparently. So I am more than happy to take any other questions you may have regarding this.
Wanted to highlight before we go to the members, if we could, just highlight here on page 3, out of the last meeting in March, members had asked for, on the licensing stats, a little bit more visualization and graphic display of information. So this is what you're now seeing here on page 3. As Randy was just mentioning, the exam request, the very first step for an individual wanting to pursue optometry licensure in the state is to submit a Part 1 application and get authority to sit and take the exam. You can see how the volume here in the very first graph really sort of skyrockets at the beginning part of the year, the beginning part of the calendar year, I should say, as we're heading into graduation season. Staff who's controlling the slide, if we could just maybe kind of slowly maybe scan down or scroll down as we're talking here. So what you're seeing here on all of these graphs is the bar is the volume that we have been processing. The line, which in most cases is trending downward, which is what we want to see, is the processing time to approve that specific item. So you can see initial licensure for the fiscal year that we are in, last calendar year, which was still in August and September of 2022, which is part of the current fiscal year that we are in, was our busiest 2 months for issuing optometry initial licenses. This obviously makes sense because it's right after the graduation season that happens here in May. So we're starting to see more and more of these applications come in, and you can see that there are more starting to be approved as we move closer to graduation season. If we could just scroll down a little bit further to the next. So the statement of licensures are a application process that's essentially automatic. They're basically issued on same day, so there's not much to speak about here. But if we could go down to the fictitious name permit. At the December meeting, I believe it was, we reported on a backlog that we had discovered as it related to the FNPs, the fictitious name permits. You can see here that we have done a lot of work closing out that backlog. I believe at the March meeting I had reported that we had done well over 100 FNP applications that we had approved. So here you can now see that visually. You can see the volume that we were working on between December and March. And then from there, the stats go into our opticianry program, all of the initial applications and initial licenses for those license types. And in all cases with these license types, we feel that we're managing the workload within our timelines. As you can see, all of the trend lines are heading downward, which is what we would like to see. So yeah, I wanted to call board members and the public's attention to these new stats that we're showing, and wanted to just highlight a few of the wins, if you will, that we're seeing as a result of this visual data. Happy to take any questions from members on this.
This is Member Garcia. Just another great graphic, so hats off to the staff for really bringing this great data to us to look at. I do have a question on the very first slide at the very top. We can scroll back. It has to do with the canceled, and I see the footnotes canceled for expired licenses more than 3 years. That 5,598 was that kind of a cleanup, or is that a running total?
I believe that's a running total. Is that correct, Randy?
Yeah, so at the time that this report was run, that is the total number of optometrist licenses that were currently in canceled status. And what that means, as you said, is that they have been expired or delinquent and expired for more than 3 years. That can be anything from 3 years and 1 day to, 19, 20, 30 years. So, but yeah, that is the current total of canceled licenses as of the day that this was reported.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just one more note on that is it's probably inherent in what Randy was just mentioning, but by law, automatically licenses cancel after 3 years following the expiration date.
Board Member Sims, just want to congratulate the staff on doing a great job on getting that backlog met, and the new stats look really great. So thank you for making those adjustments.
Hi there, Member Hancock. Again, thank you for all the hard work. I do have a quick question in regards to the RDO, the SLD, and the CLD for retirement. It's my understanding that there is no option to put your license in retirement. It will just show as surrendered or canceled. Am I correct in that?
That's my understanding. I'm not aware of a retired category on the optician side, unlike what exists on the optometry side.
And will we have any kind of maybe some time to address that?
It would probably require a statutory change. The genesis as to why our board and other boards at DCA have retired volunteer license statuses was exactly for the reasons that you were just mentioning, Member Hancock, that outside of the law specifically authorizing it, unless you continued to pay to keep your license active, it would show as delinquent and then eventually canceled, which can carry a sort of negative connotation when as the licensee holder that you didn't do anything wrong, you've retired and are not working in that profession any longer. So I'm not aware of a way that we could issue a retired license without statutory authority to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Member Kawaguchi. First off, Randy, how's it going? It's been a long ride. You and I have been together the entire time.
Absolutely.
So thank you for all that service. So my question is really kind of more interpreting the graphs on that first page, page 3. So we see a bump in optometrist initial license in August, September, and then we see another bump under exam requests in January through March. So maybe actually Dr. Wong can answer this question, but initial license requests from third year students anticipating graduation. Is that where we get a bump in August of the year? Because most schools graduate their students in May, I believe. So why is there a bump in August?
So I'm going to attempt to answer the question, and I think Greg can too. I think the initial part in August and then also again in January is when the students, and these will probably be the fourth year students, when they're registering for their CLRE exams.
So you asked a good question about interpreting the data, and let's look at the very first graph here, optometrist exam request. So on the natural, this time of the year, the beginning part of this year, we expect to see more CLRE requests. But let's interpret some of the data. One of the reasons why you see the massive spike from December to January and then even continuing a little into February, I recognize that March is higher than February, but let's just focus on December through February. Randy kind of hinted at it. We have been discovering some issues and challenges with respect to Breeze and our exam vendor, PSI. This is going to get a little wonky, but I'll try not to make it wonky. This is called an F modifier problem. And so this is supposed to be an automatic process where somebody submits payment and then the internet systems talk to each other and authorization is sent, and the person is shortly thereafter, days, weeks, given authorization and authority to take the exam. We discovered around this time period, December, January, that was not happening, and that the problem, as we call it, is this F modifier problem. So the reason why there's a massive spike on these exam requests, the approval specifically, that massive line in January, and why you begin to see the processing time immediately come all the way down to essentially zero, is because that's supposed to be an automatic process that was not automatic given the IT problem, that when we identified those issues, put in place a fix to address all of those exam requests. So in January, a lot of the requests that had been stacked up, if you will, in a queue, unbeknownst to us, given this IT situation, got addressed and got handled. So again, on the natural, we should expect to see a higher volume in the first quarter for exam requests, but the reason why you see a big spike there in January is because of that IT issue. The reason why you see on the second graph, which is the initial license that has been approved. And so remember, our application process is two parts, part one and part two. What I was just speaking about in regards to the F modifier issue is the part one process. That's the authority to sit for the CLRE exam. The issuance of the initial license is part two. And so graduation happens in May, and then everybody is applying for part two following graduation, submitting transcripts, NVEO scores, fingerprinting, background checks, what have you. And so what this data shows you here in the second graph is that the overwhelming majority of our new applicants for initial license were approved for that initial license in August and September of last year. Does that, I hope that, I know that was a lot of information, but I hope that gets close to answering your question.
It does. And for us as a board to best understand processing times and status of things and utilizing graphs like this, I think it's important that we consider defining the tables or the graphs so that we're able to see our actual processing times. So one of the challenges for us has always been our actual processing times once everything is submit and received isn't horrible. But sometimes our data shows this super long timeline from initial application through the entire process. And that obviously does take quite a while because there's all these different steps in the true application process. So I've always been trying to seek a way for us to be able to demonstrate that the timelines as a co-responsibility of the applicant as well as us as a board. So I guess
Yeah, I
my
think that's
suggestion going forward is we continue to look at tables that we use to be able to demonstrate not just to the board members, but also to potential applicants our actual timelines.
definitely agree.
So can I ask, so Randy, can I ask a question? Is there a way for us to get data to find out what the timeline is from the part 2 of the application to the actual initial license?
So yes, we can get data that shows from when that part 2 is submitted to when it's approved and the license issued. One of the things that Dr. Kawaguchi was mentioning does also apply to that part 2 application. We're still waiting for NBEO scores, transcripts, fingerprint results. And it's not until we've received all those items that the application is considered complete for processing. And that's where we kind of have a harder time tracking. It's how do we track, when does that application become complete? And then what is that time frame between the completion and the issuance?
Member Kaguchi, what you're seeing right now in that line is the processing time for these licenses. So approximately 80 days is the time for issuing an optometry license as of this report.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from board members?
It's
And
Mark.
are there any?
Raised.
Go ahead, Mark.
If you're ready. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Just for the benefit of the members of the public, I know in some of our responses we say it's a function of statute that, particularly in regard to the retiree requirements and statistics, if in those instances where we say something is required by statute, what we mean to say is, as a regulatory board, our hands are probably tied because of a law that the legislature has passed. But members of the public are welcome to lobby the legislature or work with the Optometric Association to change those restrictions in the law, such that, for example, in addressing Dr. Reimer's comment, that maybe there's a special CE requirement or a lower CE requirement is permitted. But that would be something that the legislature would have to change in their laws. And again, work with your local legislator or work with your optometric association. They get laws changed all the time. Thanks.
Are there any other board members who have comments? You guys would just have to unmute yourself because I can't see any raised hands right now. All right, so there's no more comments from board members. Are there any comments from anyone in the meeting room? No comments from anyone in the meeting room. Mr. Moderator, if you can open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
We are now accepting public comment on 6CI. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. All right, let's go on to the next item, which is item 6D.
Thank you, President Wong. Agenda item 6D, regulatory update. I will be giving this item today. In your packet, you have a memo, which is the latest and greatest edition of the status of our previously board-approved regulatory packages. We'll give an update on a few of them. The first one is the mobile optometric office regulations. The current status of these regulations remain at board staff level. We are working on package documents and have consulted recently with the budget office on updating several of the workload calculations related to the fiscal side of these regulations. We're anticipating that we will submit these regulations to the Department of Consumer Affairs Legal Office in June of this year. The second reg on our previously approved reg package list is the optometry continuing education regulations. I'm proud and happy to report that this regulation has been noticed on April 14th of this year by OAL for a 45-day public comment period, and that public comment period ends on May 31st of this month, May 31st, 2023. We would certainly welcome public comment from anyone on these proposed regulations. The third regulation we have is the implementation of AB 458. This is the home residence permit. We are beginning staff development on this regulation as well, but do not have an estimated timeline for submission. The same comment would apply for the next several regulations that are board approved. That's the optometry disciplinary guidelines, the optician program omnibus regulatory changes, and the dispensing optician disciplinary guidelines, and the requirements for glaucoma certification. Those, all of those items remain still at staff level, and we do not have an anticipated date of submission to the department at this time. That is the regulatory update for item 6D. Happy to take questions from members.
So no comments from board members. Are there any comments from the meeting room? No comments from anyone in the meeting room. Ms. Moderator, if you can open up the Q&A for public comment.
We are once again open for public comment, this time on 6D. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. And our first request comes from James Deerdorf. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, James, we see that you've unmuted, but we haven't heard from you.
Can you hear me?
There you are.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, on the mobile optometric office, after it gets submitted to the Department of Consumer Affairs, in June, how long does it take for those to be implemented where we can actually apply to receive permit to have a mobile optometric office?
Dr. Deerdorf, it's a very good question. I can't give you a date certain on that. What I can say about it is that we will be targeting most likely July 1st of next year. The process from submission to the Division of Legal Affairs within the department, they'll take their process, their time to review. It could be a month or so. Depending on what those reviews look like, hopefully, and certainly my intention would be to submit materials that are in a really good spot, so that we minimize any back and forth in that review period. But upon approval from the Division of Legal Affairs, it would move throughout the process in the department and then go over to agency. There would be a 45-day public comment period once these regulations are noticed, but I don't have a specific time frame as to when we would know that these regulations would be implemented and applications could start being received. I do want to say that I fully recognize the importance of this endeavor. This is a statutory requirement that this board has failed to meet for the last few years when we've been given extensions after extensions. And so my commitment, as I've shared, I believe in other forums and other meetings, is to carry that baton forward and implement the regulations as the legislature directed. So we're doing the hard work to make that happen. Unfortunately, due to a variety of reasons, this regulation and many of the others have been allowed to kind of wither on the vine the past few years. So we're committed to doing the work and look forward to sharing more updates at future meetings regarding this and all of the other board-approved regulations.
Well, it's great to hear we're making progress because we're eagerly anticipating the day that we can have a mobile optometric office up and functioning. So it looks like the soonest it could be would July of next year.
Thank you. And there are no other requests for public comment at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let's go ahead and go on to item number 7.
Yes, we are going to move on to agenda item number 7, Legislation and Regulation Committee Report and Consideration and Possible Action on Committee Recommendations. In your packet, and available for members as well, is a pretty lengthy item for item 7, a pretty robust package of materials for item 7. So I'm going to jump into it. The first just background and update that I'd like to share with the board and members of the public is just by way of background that at our March meeting, the board had referred several legislative bills to the Legislation and Regulation Committee for that committee to further discuss and analyze. And that committee then met on April 21st of this year and made recommendations on several bills that are reported here. And we'll talk about those here in a moment. 2 other updates to share with the board coming out of the Legislation and Regulation Committee meeting from last month is item number 2 here in the memo, future legislative proposal for diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, continuing education. As I think members of the board and the public are well aware, this has been a strong interest of our board going back several meetings to explore what it would take and what it would look like to have our licensees, our licensed optometrists, take continuing education in the topic of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We discussed this at both the Practice and Education Committee meeting earlier this year, and then considered it in a little bit more detail at the LRC meeting last month. The action requested by the committee was for staff to bring to the board a ledge proposal for consideration in calendar year 2024 to pursue a statutory change which would encourage our optometrists to take CE continuing education courses in these topics. Staff would anticipate bringing this item to the board at the August meeting for the board's review and consideration. The next update here is item 3, the discussion on Federal Military Spouse Licensing Relief Act, and we were fortunate enough to hear earlier today from Brian Clifford in the Department Exec Office related to this item as well. But the committee also discussed this last month, and as was mentioned by Mr. Clifford, this is a pretty wide-ranging piece of federal law, a very important piece of federal law that was signed into law in January by President Biden that for the first time provides for this reciprocity for military veterans and their spouses. There is some question within the department and certainly within our board about how exactly this would apply. As was mentioned by Brian Clifford, the license portability that is provided for in this federal law would enable somebody licensed as an optometrist or one of our opticianry license types licensed in any other state to come into California and use that license to work here. They don't have to apply for or receive any authorization from the California State Board of Optometry. And this would obviously work in the other direction. Any licensed California optometrist who is a military veteran or a spouse who has to move to another state would be able to go into that state under the same legal requirements. However, they do have to submit to this their new state's requirements, and the federal law specifically does mention CE, and so therein lies a very specific question about how this would apply to us. If you have a license issued by another state and you are now in California working under the federal law that allows you to, but that also requires you to submit to our state board for purposes of continuing education. What exactly does that mean? Does that mean you must meet our CE requirement? It's an open question. That all being said, in terms of impact to our board, we don't anticipate a wide-ranging impact. We've dug into some of our data to look at how many of our licensees that we already have that are either a current military designee or a military spouse, and we don't have a lot. It's single digits for all of our license types. So don't anticipate a huge impact, unlike maybe, for example, a few other professions that might have a bigger impact. We also include here in the memo for informational purposes just the existing state legal requirements and process that our board and all DCA boards and bureaus currently meet in the Business and Professions Code. There's a variety of sections that require us to waive fees, including renewal fees and other requirements such as CE for folks that are called to active duty. And there's also provisions for expedited licensure and waiving of initial license fees for military spouse applicants. So we already, under current law, perform a variety of necessary services for our military families, and certainly look forward to assisting them and helping them navigate this new federal law as well. But as I mentioned, there are some open questions as to how it would apply specifically. To date, we've only had one person reach out and inquire with our board as to this federal law, but we certainly want to make sure that we're getting this information out and sharing it with our licensees, members, and folks in the public as well. I think it would be a good spot before we jump into the actual legislative bills to just take a pause. That's a lot of information just shared on the DEIB and the federal military law, and see if members have questions, and I think maybe open it up to public comment as well before we move on to the ledge items.
This Member Kawaguchi, I do have a question on the Military Spouse Licensing Relief Act. So as we roll forward in its interpretation, there could be a potential that we have to look at regulatory changes for optometry, I would assume. Is that something that we're going to wait to hear from DCA about? Or is it something that we will internally as an optometry board be evaluating?
That's a really good question. When myself and the rest of the executive officers and bureau chiefs in the department first learned about this, we were informed of it by the department. And I don't certainly want to speak for the department, but I do believe that they are further examining this from a legal perspective. And having conversations in that regard, all with the idea of trying to provide some guidance to not just our board, but all of the boards and bureaus in DCA. So I do believe that is something that is on the table and being worked toward, and certainly am hopeful that we will receive guidance in that direction to help inform us as we move forward here.
I think that'll be good because there's such a diversity of optometry practice laws across the US. And depending on each state, how they choose to interpret this new federal law, um, there could be, even though it's going to be a low number of situations, if one state interprets it differently than we do, and we don't have anything in our regulations, it just kind of puts us in a bad situation of potentially a practitioner demanding to practice in a certain way or to get certain things that other states are allowing.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think we're largely still in sort of education and learning mode, and but looking forward to, we want to make sure that we're providing both a good service and the right service to all of our applicants and licensees, but certainly those folks who have served our country. So we are very interested in making sure that we apply this correctly and making sure that we assist our military families in the way that they deserve to be assisted.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from board members? Are there any comments from the meeting room? There's no comments from the meeting room. Mr. Moderator, if we can open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
We are now accepting public comment on reciprocity. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please.
All right, we will continue on with the remainder of our item 7, which is the Legislation and Regulation Committee report. We're going to move on here to item 4 within that memo, which is the consideration and possible action on committee recommendations from the April 21st, 2023 LRC meeting. The first bill that we have to talk about here today is AB 1028 by McKinner, reporting of crimes, mandated reporters. We've included here for all of these bills that we're going to be discussing here, the staff analysis that was presented and provided to the LRC committee on April 21st with just minor updates to that information. We've also included relevant legislature committee analyses, as well as the most recent bill text for each one of these bills. So you will find all of that information in this packet. But AB 1028 by McKinner is a bill that has to do with mandated reporting. All healing arts professionals, including our licensees, are required to mandate report when they have suspicions of physical harm, sexual domestic violence, for example. This bill would change some of those requirements on and after January 1st of 2025 to eliminate the requirement that an optometrist report to law enforcement when they suspect that a patient has suffered physical injury caused by assault or abuse. It would replace that existing mandated requirement with a requirement that they be given brief counseling education and a warm handoff to a local or national provider of violence advocacy services. It does exempt healthcare practitioners from civil or criminal liability for reports that they make that are in good faith. This bill is a reintroduction of a bill from last year that was held in the Senate Appropriations suspense file. There's a very, very large group of both proponents and opponents lined up on either side of this bill, which we've included in the materials here. When the committee considered this bill, back on 4/21. The recommendation from staff, the recommendation from committee members was neutral. We had a split vote of 2 to 1. And I think I don't mean to speak for the members that were participating in that committee, but I think a lot of the feelings of those members are very similar to the arguments you see contained in the committee analysis here with respect to the official proponents and supporters. Again, this bill would change the mandating reporting requirement in certain instances, but nothing would prevent the practitioner from still giving that report. It would just change the mandate from a mandate to a permissive. So this is the first bill that we have for consideration and discussion with the full board. It's AB 1028, Reporting of Crimes Mandated Reporters. Happy to hear comments and any possible board recommendation for a position on this bill.
This is Member Garcia. Just for transparency, I was the no vote on the committee on this. I just feel, of all the things that we're going to review today, this is probably the one that fits most cleanly in our wheelhouse for protecting the health and safety of all Californians, especially the most vulnerable. This mandated reporting law has been in place for decades, and I don't see why there would be any need to change it. I think our responsibility as healthcare providers, as optometrists in all healthcare fields, is to protect those that need the protection. If we see something, just like a lot of other things, if we see something, we should say something. I think this waters down that responsibility to a point where I think a lot of providers will just say, it's not mandated anymore. I'm just not going to get involved. And I think that would just potentially lead to more assault, more cases of child abuse, of all the things that are ugly in our communities. I think by changing it, it kind of takes us off the hook. And when we're removed from being mandated to do something, then we're obviously, I think, as a group, going to do less of it. So I just see that changing at this point, with things that are happening in our communities, doesn't make sense. As a board, this is clearly what we're here to do. So that's why I voted no. And I would encourage good discussion on this, but I don't see any reason to take a neutral or a support position. Thank you.
Board Member Sims, I concur with Board Member Garcia. It is our role to protect those who need, particularly those who don't have a voice. And so I believe that it should continue to be mandated. And I just want to make sure that is on the record.
It's Member Mordomi. I was chair of the committee. So Jeff made some really, really good points during the committee meeting. Thank you, Jeff, for starting the conversation. To correct staff's explanation, this bill applies to all medical care providers, not just optometrists. And so the question I had was, does the Board of Optometry want to take a position on this? And that's when I like to hear a discussion on from the board members, because I think my assumption is this affects other healthcare professions much more than optometrists, psychologists, medical doctors. Current law requires that reporting, right? And I am not advocating that be changed. I guess my question for the board members, particularly the professional board members, is this a bill that we want to oppose on the record, or do we want to just sit on the sidelines and let the District Attorneys Association and these other groups fight it out? That is my predominant question. Is this something that we want to take a stand on, or inject ourselves in the debate? I would guess I fully agree and understand Jeff's argument that this is a good thing to have. I'm expecting that the domestic violence proponents are saying, well, this this deters people from seeing psychologists or other healthcare professionals, because if they know that abuse is has to be reported by those folks, they're deterred from seeking medical help. That said, I'm very interested in hearing everyone's thoughts on this.
This is Member Garcia. I would like to make a comment on Mark's comment. So, optometrists in California and throughout the country are often the gateway to healthcare. I mean, we see that every day with diabetes and other health issues, where patients and people that come into our offices often don't seek primary care or specialty care. They end up in our offices because they see us as a specialty that can help them and as non-threatening. But I mean, again, we see cases like this in our optometry practices. And, I think as the Board of Optometry, we should take a position. I think we should be proactive and say, hey, mandated reporting is healthy. It does provide safety and advocacy for those patients that we do see. I don't think that it would in any way negatively affect the other professions.
This is Member Ross. Great points made by both of you. And I think I would just echo Dr. Garcia's sentiments here. I think the doctor-patient relationship is, sort of sacred within the healthcare profession. I think taking a neutral position on this would be the wrong move in this situation, because I think it's just really important that not only as a board, but as healthcare providers, that we're always in the position of protecting patients. I think I would have to agree with Dr. Garcia's position on this issue. Thank you.
This is Member Kawaguchi. So I agree with some things, and I disagree with other things. I appreciate, Mark, that you're changing your recommendation, it sounds like. At this point of the bill.
No, actually, the recommendation was neutral. I haven't changed my.
I know. I see it in the meeting presentation versus what you just said was different. Because
open mind.
Yeah. So what you're saying today is where I'm at, which is I'm not ready to take a position on this bill, of any kind. I think that it's an opportunity for us to wait a little bit and see how things proceed forward. I don't see a necessity of us taking a position at this time, unless somebody could tell me why it's important for us to take position today.
This is Member Garcia.
Well, I have to apologize. I should not have interrupted you, so I apologize profusely. But you raised a really good question that I'd like staff to answer for us, because I thought not taking position was the equivalent of neutral, and if that's not correct, I'd like to be informed. Yeah, thank you for that.
This is Executive Officer Pruden. I'll make an attempt to chime in here. So I think there may be two questions. One, why take a position, and then another question about neutral. This bill impacts optometrists. It impacts our licensees. As Member Mordomi also stated, it impacts all other healing arts professionals that are subject to this mandated reporting. So that's why we have brought this to the board and to the committee, because of the direct impact to the licensee. Neutral, there's a variety of reasons, political and other reasons why one would take a neutral and not take a support or take an oppose. If there's a split at the board, for example, it can't be arrived at. Neutral could be a compromise position, for example. There are other reasons why you might take a neutral on a piece of legislation as opposed to affirmatively saying support or oppose. Again, given the politics of not just maybe the topic, politics around the author, for example. So there's a variety of reasons why one might stay neutral. Another reason why somebody might stay neutral on a bill, or why a board might want to be neutral on a bill, is to see how developments in that bill unfold as the bill moves throughout the legislative process.
Board Member Sims, just to, again, I agree with Board Member Garcia. However, I do have a question. Again, if we were to remain neutral at this point, at what point, if we see it's going in a direction where they're attempting to, where there may be a strong pull to get rid of the mandated, at what point can we then come in and say that we are in support of maintaining the mandated reporting? If we remain neutral at this point.
So the taking of a position on any legislative bill is a formal action by the board. At any subsequent board meeting, if the item was appropriately agendized, the board would have the authority to entertain a motion and make a different determination as to what position they wanted to take.
Board Member Sims, understand that, but I'm asking specifically about timelines. Will it be too late for the August? I just want to know what is the progression of this particular bill? Do we anticipate that we would have an opportunity at our August meeting to then have a more affirmative response?
I apologize, Member Sims. Yeah, let me address that specifically. So the bill currently is on Assembly third reading, which means it's, well, as of the date of this memo, I haven't checked on it today, but as of the date of our materials, the bill was on third reading, which in a shorthand way means it's one vote away from moving over to the Senate, which is the other side of the legislature. So whether this bill will be still where this bill will be in the legislative process in August is impossible to know, but two related points here. Our August meeting is quite late into the legislative year, and so by that period of time, most bills have moved into a place where your ability to make to influence them is lesser than it would have been earlier in the year. So that's one point. Second point is that that doesn't mean that we don't have any future opportunity depending on what we do here today. On this bill or any other item that we feel is sufficiently important, we can call a special board meeting and entertain possible actions on items via that route as well. That's actually something that this board has done in its past related to other very important and big legislative items. So we have that ability as well. But yes, August, an end of August meeting is quite late in the legislative cycle. Just one final point on this is we are in the first year of a 2-year legislative session. All legislative sessions are 2 years. The first year is in the odd year. So if this bill is not acted on this year, it does have the ability to still be alive and acted on next year. But again, that's all unknowable at this point.
Executive Officer Bruden, this is Mark Mordomi again. I'm still not clear as to what choices the board has on bills in general. Support, oppose, neutral, and then are you saying we can take no position? Are there 4 choices or are there only 3 choices for us?
So there's a lot of choices that that the board can take. You can take no position. You can formally say that you have no position on it. Of course, you can also have no position because you've not considered it. I think at the March meeting or maybe at the December meeting in their packet, we published the list from the board's manual regarding positions and what they mean. A few other positions that the board can take include support if amended, oppose unless amended. Those are two other positions that are frequent that boards can take. But certainly the board can take a no position.
Hi, this is Member Pruitt. I'm kind of on the fence in the sense that I see maybe the potential purpose or attempt or what they're trying to achieve with this, and that is not taking away the ability to report if you see something and see someone that potentially is in danger or in harm's way, but it's also providing more options for you to address it rather than the hard go straight to a local authority, because there are so many nuances with things like this. And even currently where I am currently practicing in Indian health, there are a lot of cultural factors that come into play where the mandated reporting sometimes doesn't fit and can sometimes be counterproductive. And even back during training when I was at the VA, where I had a patient who was suspicious of elder abuse, mandated reporting, and at the time, the protocol was for VA police to come in, escort the patient to social services, and the police came in with their guns because at the time, the only ward that they were allowed to take their arms off and come and be a little less threatening was the psych ward. And so fast forward the entire residency year, that patient never came back to another follow-up appointment. And I just balance it that, okay, yeah, there was a need there and definitely something needed to be done, but was the hard mandated reporting the best approach to take care of that situation? And I am almost inclined, because I don't know what happened or if he actually did lose vision because he did have a sight-threatening condition, if that it wasn't the best approach because of that. It did more harm than good. And so I don't know if I'm taking this bill and trying to understand it, and I'm seeing it that it's not removing the ability to report, but trying to find more options to allow you to do it in the best way that suits the situation that's in front of you.
Yes, Member Garcia again. So yeah, great arguments on both sides. But I think by removing the mandate, you remove responsibility. I realize there are still options that are out there, but I think mandating reporting is important because it's always in the back of our mind when we're seeing a patient and we're seeing something that doesn't make sense. We're seeing signs of abuse. Mandated reporting makes us do that. I think if you take that away, then it becomes someone else's problem. So again, I just think, this as a board of optometry, that we're mandated to protect the health and safety of our patients and citizens. I don't see any reason why we would take a support or neutral position. I think, if anything, we should support it. I'm sure we should oppose it. I apologize.
Does anybody have any other comments? Do board members have any other comments? Okay, I am now going to move on to the meeting room. Does anyone in the meeting room? Oh, there's no motion. So, okay.
Need a motion.
First, all right.
First, there is no motion.
Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion?
Member Gracie, I'd like to make a motion to take a no position.
Board Member Sims, I second.
Okay.
Well, a question for council. I think I heard that the motion was a no position. I think we may need to correct that motion if your intention to oppose, correct?
Oppose, correct, an opposed position.
Okay. So can you restate your motion?
Yes, I would like to, I would motion that we take an opposed position on AB 1028.
Board Member Sims, I second.
Now go public comment. Before we vote. All right, before we vote, I'm going to take public comment from the meeting room. There is no public comment from the meeting room. Mr. Moderator, could you open up the Q&A for public comment, please?
We are now accepting public comment on AB 1028, or the motion for AB 1028. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dialing users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. So, Dr. Garcia, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Member Hancock,
Aye.
Member Kawaguchi,
No.
Member Morodomi,
No.
Member Pruitt,
No.
Member Ross,
Aye.
Member Sims,
Aye.
Member Wong,
No.
and Member Garcia, I vote aye. It looks like it's a split.
Board counsel, what does a split vote mean?
We need to have a majority vote, so you can continue deliberating, you can entertain another motion. If the board is not able to reach a consensus, no position is also an option. That does not.
Board Member Sims, I'd like to have the board consider if we were to request that they amend this to indicate that, yes, it has to be mandated. However, there can be consideration as to whether or not it should be mandated to the police or to hand off to a maybe a community resource rather than going directly to the police. However, my point is that it should still remain mandated. So just something to consider.
This is Member Pruitt, and yeah, that's exactly, I was thinking along the same lines that I would be fully back if it was mandated action. Like you have to take action on it, but reporting to law enforcement maybe not be the one that you have to do it to. If you just mandate that there has to be action taken, that will be fully supported and back behind that.
So this is the Executive Officer Pruden. I just want to be clear on what I'm hearing Member Sims and Member Pruitt speaking about, because the bill does require a healthcare practitioner. It would remove the mandate that goes to law enforcement, but it would still require them to provide information regarding counseling, education, or other support, and offer a warm handoff or referral to domestic violence or sexual violence advocacy services. So I believe the bill does have a mandate, if you will. It's just a mandate in a different direction.
It says, although this bill would eliminate mandatory reporting, that's what it says. In many instances, it would still allow health practitioners to make the report. So it's still allowing the practitioner to make that decision, but it does remove the mandate. Is that way I read it? It's in the staff report.
Board Member Sims, I agree with Board Member Garcia. It appears that it's more, it takes away the mandated responsibility, and then it's more of, oh, you're allowed. However, it's not mandated. So for me to support the bill, I would consider amending it to say that it has to be mandated, whether it be handing off to law enforcement or to maybe another community partner.
I would support that.
Okay, so on our meeting information, there's a way that you can click on the actual legislation and look at the actual legislation. So instead of, relying only on the summary for us, you might want to take a look at the actual bill summary.
That's correct. There is a link in your materials. There's also the full bill text for this bill and every other bill included in the packet. And I'm not seeing the permissiveness of the I'm not seeing any permissiveness that a healthcare practitioner has with respect to the warm handoff or to the domestic violence agencies. I believe the bill does require that. Looking at 11160 of the bill, subdivision B, a healthcare practitioner, it provides a definition, shall make a report regarding persons described in sub A. And then it talks about what that report must look like. Further down in that same section is where the warm handoff information is also spoken about.
For those who have the combined packet, I would direct your attention to page 69. It's obviously in regards to AB 1028. Subdivision G starts out discussing a health practitioner and goes on to line 13, who provides medical services to a patient whom the health practitioner knows or reasonably suspects is experiencing any form of DV as set forth in the reference health and safety code or sexual violence, shall, to the degree that it is medically possible for the individual patient, provide brief counseling, education, or other support and offer a warm handoff. So the only limitation to the mandate is to the extent that it's medically possible for that patient. So there is a requirement there.
In addition, counsel, and maybe to Member Garcia's point, if there's any limitation here, it may be in terms of the location in which you are practicing, because G starts off by saying a healthcare practitioner employed by, and then it is specific in terms of the places in which you are employed. So there may be a question as to whether this mandate in terms of the warm handoff may not appear to apply to folks who are healthcare practitioners not employed in one of those specific locations. So I know that Member Sims had made mention of a possible amendment that regarding this, and then Member Pruitt echoed that. I don't think we have any formal motion on the table regarding that, and I know obviously that we're probably all have eyeballs looking at the bill language and this current text. Again, where we are now is at a tie vote. And I think, as counsel said, we have a few options that we could proceed with from here.
Counsel, does the law say, or the bill say, that you shall make a warm handoff or may make a warm handoff? And what section is that?
It says may offer a warm handoff, and that's under H. So.
Okay. So it's not required. It's not mandated.
It's not required.
No. So again, we're talking about two different sections here in the same bill, member. So G does require, is not permissive. It is specific to healthcare practitioners employed by a health facility, clinic, physician's office, local or state public health department, local government agency or clinic or other type of facility operated by a local or state public health department. And it goes on to say, shall, to the degree that is medically possible, provide brief counseling, education, other support, and offer a warm handoff. So that's a shall requirement. H, which President Wong just mentioned, is permissive. H just says a health practitioner may offer a warm handoff. So those are the two sections of this bill that speak a little bit differently in terms of what's required.
I think that Member Sims is pointing out is this warm handoff is, well, the language of statute says shall offer a warm handoff. It doesn't say that the practitioner has to make a warm handoff. I think that's the kind of crevice or crack that member Sims is suggesting, and I think she's suggesting that not only should it be offered, that the practitioner make a warm handoff, not just offer it to the patient.
So those would be two possible, if members wanted to proceed with a subsequent motion to, I'm not sure if it would be supportive amended or oppose unless amended, that would be for you all to decide, but it sounds like the specific amendment would be, as you were just going down, Member Moridomi, to require make it not be an offer, but make it required that the referral happens, and then maybe a possible second amendment would occur in subdivision H to make it a shall instead of a may. A healthcare practitioner shall provide a warm handoff.
So basically, what it seems what we want is that no matter the practice environment, if it's in a hospital, what do they call it, a local or state department, or if it's in someone's private practice, it sounds like what the board members want is that there shall be some sort of handoff, right? So we want it mandated basically no matter the practice situation.
So as member
Sims, that is correct.
Sorry to interrupt. And just back to Executive Officer Prudence' point about the environment in which the handoff is being made. If you look at page 64 of the materials, sub 11160 sub B sets forth the environment in which the mandated reporting is still required, and the language tracks the same as sub G in terms of the language that you had brought to our attention, Mr. Pruden. Health facility, clinic, physician's office, local or state public health department. So the language tracks and the environments are the same. I just wanted to make that clear.
Member Garcia, so I think it's clearly that this bill just confuses the issue, like many bills do. But again, I would say as a healthcare provider, I see it's my responsibility if I see something to say something. And I think supporting this bill just takes us in the wrong direction, because that's not what we're here to do. We're here to support those that and protect those that are most vulnerable, that end up in optometry offices, and they do often. So we have to keep that in mind. This is not something that never happens. It happens. And I think if you take all providers and optometrists in our case off of the mandated reporting hook, then you're going to have potentially patients being harmed and killed unnecessarily. I think it comes down to the opposition is whether law enforcement is the best department or the best agency to get involved, and maybe not, but every community has a law enforcement. Not every community has social services. We live in the, again, I have to speak for rural Central Valley. We don't have the resources that you do in the Bay Area or LA or San Diego. We have local law enforcement. We don't have a lot of the social services to reach out to. So again, you have to think of it as being outside of your normal areas. This affects, people in rural California just as much, but we don't have the resources that you may have. So again, I think opposition is the only position that makes sense at this point. Thank you.
This is Member Pruitt, and I just have a question, just trying to make sense of it and clarify it for myself. Is it possible to take a position that we support it with amended language? Because I am just thinking that there are some areas and places in the state that do not have the resources outside of law enforcement. So in those instances that's your only option, that they should still go and mandate report to law enforcement. I wanted to essentially say that it's mandated that you do a warm handoff or you like you do something like it's actionable and that you don't just leave it in the hands of the patient and just say these are some resources and it dies there. Like you're mandated to take action yourself as well as educate and inform the patient. And so is there a way to like uh, say that it's supported as long as the mandate to do something is remains?
So this is Executive Officer Pruden. If that was, the board would essentially have two avenues that they could go down in this path, and that would either be a support if amended or an oppose unless amended. And those positions mean very different things. If you do a support if amended and you don't get your amendments, you kind of are still okay with the bill. It's not as strong of a position to take unless you go, as opposed to going oppose unless amended. When you go oppose unless amended, you're being very clear that you really, really want to see these amendments, and if these amendments don't happen, then you're going to remain opposed. So that's a question for the board to engage with here in terms of any possible amendments that they want to see on this bill. To be aware of the position that you take. They mean, those two positions that both are attempting to seek amendments mean very different things.
Okay, this is Member Garcia. Then I would like to propose an opposition unless amended to maintain the mandated reporting requirement to law enforcement or other social services that are available.
Board Member Sims, I second.
So just
Dr.
so staff
Garcia,
is,
could you please repeat the motion for me?
Sure. I would move that we oppose AB 1028 unless amended to maintain the mandated reporting requirement to law enforcement or social services.
So let me understand, if we take that position, then if the authors not amend, then our formal position is to oppose.
Correct.
Is opposition. Is that right? Is that my understanding what you just told us, Executive Officer?
yes, that's correct. If you take an oppose unless amended and you don't see those amendments, then you would be moving toward an opposed position.
Thank you.
This is Brittany Ng. I just want to clarify with respect to the proposed Penal Code section 11160 subdivision G, which is on page 69. My reading is that the language is mandatory, that the provider who works in that environment shall, to the degree it's medically possible, provide counseling, education, other support, and offer a warm handoff to domestic violence and sexual violence services there. I guess I'm not quite tracking where the mandatory language is not perceived to exist. I do know that subdivision H was on to provide a voluntary may offer, but it refers to other available victim services as opposed to.
This is Mordomi. It says shall offer. So
I guess.
I mean, the offer is the making of the offer is mandatory to the patient, but the patient can say no, and no handoff occurs. I think that's what Member Sims and Member Garcia pointed out.
I think this is Executive Officer Pruden. I think that's essentially correct because we're talking about two terms here for which the bill actually provides definitions. We're talking about warm handoff and we're talking about the word referral. And further down in the bill, same code section, both of these terms are defined. And so, for example, referral does not actually mean that the healthcare practitioner make the referral to some organization. It is actually meaning share information about how the patient can get in touch with whatever that organization is. And similarly, warm handoff is a definition in the bill that just says may include but is not limited to establishing a direct and live connection through a call with some sort of advocate, and the patient can decline that handoff. So I think when we look at these definitions and read them in conjunction with the specific requirements in G and H, that's probably where some of the concern comes from.
Okay, yeah, I would just encourage, with the motion, or at least being clear to staff, what precise, reporting, the board is looking for, so that it's clear, when it's reported to legislative staff.
Yeah, I think if this motion that's on the table in a second, it gets adopted by the board, I believe that the motion is sufficiently clear for staff to move forward in that regard. It would require not just amendments to possibly subsections G and H, but also possibly to these definitions.
Sure.
So this is Member Kawaguchi. I wanted to make a comment to clarify my currently intended vote. I don't disagree strongly with anything that my fellow board members have been discussing. But the one thing I do feel strongly about is there is room for improvement in protecting the public that are at risk for some of these things. And with our current laws, although it's mandated to report, the definition of determining that is up to each personal practitioner. And so there's still opportunity there as well. I'm not ready to take a position on this bill. I think it's going to continue to be fleshed out and refined. And I think that we're showing that it does need to get refined based on all this discussion that we're having on this subject. So I'm not ready to take a position on this bill.
Member Kawaguchi, but you know better than all of us that the legislative process, it's very important to get in early to get things flushed out. If we don't say something and point out our concerns, then they won't be addressed. And it's going to get to a point where, it may go through as is. It may go through with amendments that we aren't being proactive in presenting them. So I think taking an opposite or taking a position of neutrality or not making a position, I think that's the wrong thing to do. I mean, we got to either support it, oppose it, and not stay neutral. I mean, I think it's so clear in my mind that this is important to protect. I mean, I think of it, from a child's perspective. A child is in your chair. You provide them. You can't provide them with resources, right? And the parent that's in the room with you may be the problem. So that's why mandated reporting is so important, is to protect children. I mean, you just think about the issues we're having with trafficking in persons and all the laws that are passing currently to protect people. This is kind of unraveling one of those protections for, again, the most vulnerable in our offices. So it makes no sense to me to not take an opposed position. Yeah.
I do believe we have a motion. I think we have a second. If there's no other board member comment, then yeah, we need to go to public comment.
I have one question. I think I know what the answer is, but to my fellow member Garcia, I mean, if there was no mandate and a patient comes in and under those kind of conditions, do you think that do you think that the majority of optometrists will not do anything? I mean, even if this bill passes, there's no prohibition from an optometrist to report it to report to the police. I mean, it doesn't prevent them.
Yeah, that's
anyway. Yeah.
Good question. I think human nature, optometrists are human, and they will react in a way that most people will if they see something. That's why that whole thing with see something is being pushed out there for a lot of different things. I think if you don't mandate it, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't mandate it, I think if you don't mandate it, then there's going to be less reporting, and less reporting is dangerous, even if it's just one, right? Why would you consider changing mandating reporting, even if it's to save one person's life, right? One child's life? It makes no sense.
Do board members have any other comments for this new motion? I'm going to move on to the meeting room. Are there any public comments from the meeting room? No public comments from the meeting room. Mr. Moderator, would you open up the Q&A for public comment, please?
We are now accepting public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, thank you. Okay. I think at this point we're going to have a roll call vote. Dr. Garcia, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, I will. Member Hancock?
Wait, can we repeat our motion so everyone knows what we're voting on?
Sure. The motion is to oppose AB 1028 unless amended to mandate reporting to law enforcement or social services.
Would vote aye.
Was that Member Hancock?
Yes.
Okay. Member Kawaguchi?
No.
Member Moridomi?
I'll vote aye.
Member Pruitt?
Aye.
Member Ross?
Aye.
Member Sims?
Aye.
Member Wong?
Aye.
And Member Garcia, I vote aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to try to get through at least one more bill and then maybe evaluate where our tummies are. So the next bill is item B. It's AB 1570 by Lowe, Optometry Certification to Perform Advanced Procedures. This bill was introduced in February of this year. The current status of this bill is it's a 2-year bill, which means that this bill will not be moving forward in this calendar year. It remains eligible for the legislature to act on it in January of next year, 2024. So for the time being, AB 1570 is not moving forward in this legislative year, but will still, again, remain eligible for next year. But I think as the board knows, but by way of background for those in our audience, this bill is a reintroduction of AB 2236, which was substantially similar from last year. It would create a new certificate type to allow optometrists to perform advanced laser surgical procedures, excision or drainage of non-recurrent lesions of the adnexa, injections for treatment of chalasia, and to administer anesthesia and corneal cross-linking procedures. Prior to this certification, optometrists would need to pass specific training and exam and complete education requirements developed by the board. And the bill also would require optometrists to report any adverse treatment outcomes to the board, which the board would be required to review. This bill is an important bill in that it expands the scope of optometry to enable most licensed optometrists to provide optometric services in California that are consistent with their education and training. And your packet has an extensive list of what these items are. The Leg Committee discussed this bill back on April 21st, and the conversation focused on a lot of the implementation work that would be required in the present version of the bill. And your packet includes this information as well, but a lot of that implementation work that the bill has in current form that the board would be required to do is around things like implementing forms, setting fees, coming up with a process to receive and review these adverse reports. Again, as I mentioned, this bill is a 2-year bill, which gives the board and staff an opportunity to partner with the sponsor of the bill, who's the California Optometric Association, and other stakeholders, to make sure that as this bill is considered by the legislature, that our board is able to implement this bill. And so a lot of our conversation in the Leg Committee, again, focused on those topics around how to make the bill more easily implementable from a board and staff and regulatory perspective. As was discussed earlier on another item, we've got a series of regulatory packages that have been sort of backlogged or in the queue, including one of which that we've neglected to implement after being given several legislative deadlines. And so our staff comments on this bill were really in that regard, just wanting to make sure that we're able to actually implement this in a timely and effective way. The committee recommendation was support if amended, again, with those amendments being on those implementation items. It was a unanimous vote of the committee. So happy to entertain questions from members on AB 1570 by Lowe, which is the scope bill related to optometrists.
For a comment from the meeting room, and I believe we have Christine Schultz from COA.
Hi, Christine.
Good morning, or good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment. I appreciate all of the efforts to come address some of these implementation issues. We've had good conversations about how to do that, and we have working through the process. So we're happy to take as many of those amendments as we possibly can, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the meeting room? I will then go to Mr. Moderator. Will you open up the Q&A for public comment, please?
We are now accepting public comment via WebEx. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So we don't actually have, I don't think we actually have a motion or a second on the table, but what the committee recommendation from the Leg Committee, again, was support if amended. And a motion in that regard, support if amended, on this bill today would formally allow staff to continue to engage with the association and others on developing those amendments. We don't have specific language at this time that we would be able to share until we would have authorization from the board via a motion today. As Christine and the association mentioned, we've had a few conversations preliminary and are looking forward to having many more of those productive conversations to ensure that we're able to engage affirmatively on this bill and get it right from the implementation perspective. So a motion today from the board with the second and an adoption to support if amended would be helpful for staff to continue to engage in those conversations.
Greg, this is Member Moridomi. One question before the chair opens up for a motion. How much ballpark would it cost to implement this bill? I am 100% in favor of increasing the optometrist scope of practice, because my view that more consumers get more health care when gateway practitioners like optometrists increase their scope. But that said, given our budget problems in the next 4 to 5 years, I want to know what it's going to cost us.
Yeah, it's a great question, a fair one. We, because this bill 1570 stopped early enough in the process, we don't have a formal fiscal that we're able to talk about as it relates to this bill, but it was very similar to AB 2236, which was from last year. And that bill had a fiscal that was put out by the department and submitted to the legislature that if I recall correctly, was around $1 million. all the costs associated with AB 2236 from last year. Now, again, the bill, both the bill last year and the bill this year, provides for the board the ability to set and establish the fee. So theoretically, the fee would need to be set at a rate commiserate enough to capture that expenditure cost in order to pay for it. So if a lot of these implementation issues could be worked out, again, for example, forms, things like that, that would reduce those implementation costs and bring that number down.
Thank you.
So would a board member like to make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if no one else wants to make the motion, I will make the motion. I'd like to make a motion that we support AB 1570 if amended.
This is Member Ross. I'll second.
And then I need public comment.
Council, I think we may have taken this slightly out of order. I think we may have asked for public comment prior to there being a motion in a second, and now we have a motion in a second. Should we take public comment again?
Motion, public comment should be.
Can you say that again?
Yes, given there's a pending motion, public comment should be taken again.
So I will open up public comment for the meeting room. Christine Schultz already has spoken for the COA. Mr. Moderator, if you would open up public comment on the Q&A, please.
Now accepting public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. Thank you. Dr. Garcia, if you could do a roll call vote, please.
Oh.
Dr. Garcia, I think you're muted. Can you start over again?
My apologies. Member Hancock.
Aye.
Member Kawaguchi.
Aye.
Member Moridomi.
Aye.
Member Pruitt.
Aye.
Member Ross.
Aye.
Member Sims.
Aye.
Member Wong.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes.
How are we doing? It's 1 o'clock. We've got a few more bills to do. We have item 8 to do and a closed session item. Should we stop here for lunch? Okay.
Why don't we stop for lunch? How long do you guys want? How long do you guys want for lunch? Okay. I'm getting 45 minutes. 1:45. We come back. Is that okay with everyone? Excellent. All right. We will see everybody back at 1:45.